Thanks for the introduction, Petra and Glenn. For today, we'd like to talk a bit about indeed creative techniques for new ideas, but also ideation in general, which is like a topic or a principle we work with a lot at Lunar. So basically, share the idea in general, what it means to us, how we approach it as an agency, and then we'd like to share some creative techniques for generating new ideas, because that's usually the challenge in these processes. So to start with, I'm Max, UX designer, joined by Kristof, Frontend developer. And so for today, three main portions of the talk. An aspect of what is ideation, what does it mean to us, like I said, as an agency, how it can be used as a design tool. Some challenges we've come across in the past years, because we've done quite a few of these processes. And then some techniques, as I said, to come up with new ideas. So to start with, I'm not sure if everyone knows what the term means, because it's an important concept, I think, in UX design, but maybe to start off with a sort of definition from Wikipedia. So it's really about generating new ideas and also developing these and communicating these. But of course, the Wikipedia definition is a bit theoretical. In our sector, which is usually about validating new ideas and basically building something from conceptual idea to something that is designed or even developed, and really validating an idea. It could be a new product or an existing product. It could be a conceptual prototype, a strategic idea, but really ideating, as in creating ideas to validate something. It's about gathering as much information as possible from your clients, if you work in an agency context, from the users, from the context of the project in general. Making assumptions along the way is something that you cannot ignore, basically. Assumptions will be made all the time, but I think it's really important to keep that in mind in the rest of the project, basically, and to challenge those assumptions later on. And then, of course, we'd like to think in an outcome-based way instead of really feature-based. Outcome-based goes more about what the added value is for the end user instead of literal what features should we make. And to go a bit deeper in the concept of outcomes, I could show you an example, a real-world example of this crossroads. I think it's already in America, I'm not sure. Imagine you work at a city planner's office or something, and your boss comes to you with the question of make this crossroads safer, because as you can see, there's like an arrow pointing right on the street, but apparently over 50% of the cars still turn left, which make it a dangerous situation, basically. And so your boss tells you, like, you should improve this situation because it's dangerous, make it safer. And so you think about some solutions, and the next day, this is what you do. You place some traffic signs, but apparently you come back a few days later, and this is still what happens. So you can see that despite the traffic signs, a lot of cars are still going left. And what is interesting here is the behavior of the drivers, of the users, you could say, doesn't change because of the solution. So this is one solution. I'm sure that we can think about some other things. Not sure if any of you have any ideas about what something else that could be improved here, or could be tried or as a solution.
Americans love their roundabouts, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good one. Anything else?
What's the budget?
Unlimited budget.
I put a, I don't know how to say it. like an obstacle there.
Yeah. On the left side, that blocks the cars. Yeah, okay. Well, those are all interesting solutions, of course. I think the main thing here is that these outcomes can be put in inside a framework. This is something we call the logic model framework, which is actually something that is used in non-profit organizations to get a view on where the how do you say that, donation money that comes in, how that is used and what impact it makes. And we can actually apply this to our situation here. So if you think in in terms of outcome, which is a change in user behavior, the actual impact that outcome makes is, and we can call that the result, for example. And there's a step before the outcomes, which is called outputs. And that's about the solutions or the features that we can think about that impact the outcomes. So if we apply this to our situation, we've clearly got an output, which is the traffic sign, and an outcome, which is the car that is still turning left. So the behavior of the users, of the drivers, isn't changing because of the output. And so you already answered a few things, a few other outputs that we could try. So basically, it's about changing the outcome instead of purely focusing on the outputs, on the features, you could say, of this problem, because it's relatively easy to come up with features, with outputs, but it's much harder to actually change. Well, we want the outcome to change and the outcome to make impact, and that's a much harder thing, but a much more interesting thing, because the impact is the only thing that could create value, in this case a safer street for the inhabitants of the city, for example. And the street sign obviously can't do that. So impact is much more long-term, outputs is much more short-term, is really not anything that creates any value. So that's a bit of background on the outcomes. It's a very important topic we always keep in mind, not only in ideation tracks, but in general. And that's something that Kristof will talk a bit more about in a minute. This is an example of an ideation track, you could say, at Lunar, primarily for new projects. So first of all, when it's really a new client project, we decide if there's a match with the client, because it's really about there being a cultural fit between our way of working and thinking and the client as well. Is he willing to think along with us? Is he willing to really be a part of the team? Does he have a technical background, or is he not tech savvy? All things that we take into account. But let's say that goes well, we then hold usually an internal kickoff to sync with the team that will be working on the project. The whole team, ideally, of course, goes into a discovery workshop with the client as well. And in that phase, we usually get kind of insight in the key persona types and define the big epics, the bigger portions of the project, basically, that will then define the next workshops. So ideation workshops are usually based on an epic or two epics. These, of course, have all kinds of deliverables. It could be anything from application maps, sketches, user flows, wireframes. But the most important thing here, and this is where the outcome term comes back again, is outcome statements that we want to define in this phase. And so we really define the big milestones of the project, because of course the ideation track for a new project is just the beginning. And we really try to define these epics based on the outcomes that we want to achieve, so that the business goals or the user goals that we want to achieve later on. So that is basically our view on outcomes. It's really about human behavior that you want to change, and that will hopefully in the long term will result in impact. We have a little story on this topic that went a little bit different, and that's something Kristof will talk about.
Yeah. So focusing on human behavior is something that took us a while to get right. So in the earlier days, we were like more in a supplier role. So the client like tells us what to do essentially. So how the supplier role failed, it's a story that began 2 years ago with a client that came to us they wanted to build a platform around safe data storage within the EU, and they already had a lot of features in mind they wanted to see built. So we built the platform in a few months, and after the launch, a lot of user feedback came right in, but the client couldn't do anything about it. Can anyone tell me why that is? Maybe.
You ran out of budget.
Exactly. Yep. There was no budget left, so they spent all their money on the building of the features and not the managing of the features or the after the features. So the project was pretty much in some sort of a deadlock, actually. So in hindsight, they did have a clear vision about what they wanted to see built, but they didn't have a way to convey that into a clear outcome. And they also made a lot of assumptions about their clients, what they would need, and what they would use it with. So, and we were also at fault because we were not mature enough to translate their vision into a clear outcome. And we also focused way too much on the features. So that was really an important realization for us to step back and to listen more, to observe more, and really prime the client to move away from that the feature list, and for us for the supplier role. All right. So, but the new approach, of course, comes with new challenges. Those challenges being determining the MVP, because there are a lot of misconceptions with the client about that. Managing different stakeholders and opinions, and realizing that every project is different. So with determining an MVP, you actually need a clear outcome first before you can build it. So in this case, it would be bringing a person from point A to point B, right, with a car. Okay, but if you think in features, that you cannot bring a person to point B with one wheel or with half the bodywork. But what you can do is focus on the outcome, and then you can make actually a skateboard. Because a skateboard also brings you from point A to point B. Okay, sure, the effort is much larger, maybe less comfortable, but the outcome remains the same. So you can validate your outcome with a very simple concept like that. Okay, then you have to manage client expectations, because a lot of times it's difficult to explain what an MVP is or what it should do for a client. These are some quotes from a few of our clients, like, I need this feature to be included. It's absolutely essential, so they see every feature as essential as the next. Competitor X already does so much more than we do, so they compare themselves with clients that have already been on the market for 10+ years, our user will need this at launch, and so on and so forth. Okay, so how do you explain what an MVP actually is? MVP is just a buzzword that means experiment. This is a quote from Joshua Saden's Outcomes Over Output book, which we highly recommend, by the way. It's also about creating towards value instead of the features, and more about how customer behavior will drive your choices. The most important thing is that we really need to question the idea and challenge the customer, the client, to look for added value, so what you have that the others don't have. So, and of course, also with an MVP, more features and more complexity. So the less features you have, the more simple it becomes to validate it. Okay, the next challenge is managing different stakeholders and opinions, and together in one team at that. That's something we now also do, is to really bring our experts together in a specific team right for the project. So we I as a developer get included, for instance, in the workshops as well. So we have a lot of expertise that we bring together, and the client is included as well and is seen as part of the team. That's something we really find important, because the client often sees this project as a side project, so we need the full attention of the client. So this will benefit the quality of the project as there will be more opportunities for continuous collaboration and actually more ideas if the client is involved within our team. We also need to use exercises that work for the team because everyone is different in the team, and because we have other teams per project, it's important that we choose exercises that work, because you have people who think visually, you have people who think conceptually, rationally, and so on and so forth. So that's a really important part of our team, that we tailor exercises based on the team and the client. And finally, we need to manage assumptions. A common assumption is, of course, that the client thinks that they know what their users need, what they want, but in most cases that's not the case. So it's important for us to challenge those assumptions, and in this case, it's what we're working with the end user directly and not just the client. And also remember them in the future during the whole project. If there are any assumptions in the future that come back, we can reference them again and try to eliminate those assumptions. What we also like to do is form a baseline. It's something we do quite often during our workshops. It's just on top of the whiteboard, like a core sentence that encapsulates the long-term goal of the project. It's easy this way because everyone can look at the whiteboard and say, okay, that's why we're doing this, or that's why we need to create those ideas for this. So it's pretty simple, but it has a lot of impact. Okay. So the last challenge is a bit obvious. Every project is different, but I want to emphasize it because it's not that. Yeah, and I can't find a word in English, I'm sorry. So the client is always in a different place in the process, because even different projects with the same client can be a totally new experience. So we need to acknowledge that, and we need our approach to be really flexible in that regard. So, like I said earlier, the exercises, the team, it's all part of a flexible approach. All right, I'm going to give it back to Max for some new techniques now.
Onto the fun stuff, I think. I think because it's called ideation, one of the most challenging things about the whole idea is actually coming up with new ideas or new input and new solutions. And that's something you sometimes need to be a bit inspired for. And actually, we, us together, visited UX Lisbon conference last week. Not sure if any of you went. One of the biggest UX conferences in Europe. And really chose to follow workshops and talks around this topic of ideation and coming up with new ideas or being innovative, or really interesting things we learned. So we thought it was interesting to share some insights from that time we were there. First thing is about behavioral design. This was a very interesting workshop by someone from Frog Design, Frog Agency. And this was one of the quotes I remembered from them, I wrote down. It's really about thinking in terms of user behavior instead of, again, thinking feature-based or solution-based, but thinking behavior-based when thinking about new ideas or trying to come up with new ideas. For example, when we talk about designing a chair, you get an assignment to design a chair. You could also think that in a way of designing a solution to sit, which could be anything. Could be a bench, could be a ball, could be all kinds of things. And we did an exercise which was in 3 parts to kind of grasp the concept of behavioral design. The first part was about the behavior you would want your user to do. So basically the action or the things you want the user to do in the future. And we call that describe the world that you want. And how do we do that? Describing, that is by using a behavioral statement, which looks something like this. So of course, target audience is your user group or single user, which has limitations, which are basically the preconditions required to do the behavior that you would like to happen. That user, of course, has certain motivation to get to a certain goal. So it's about getting to that goal. They have certain behavior, that is basically the action they will take to get to the goal they want. And then every behavior should be measured be able to be measured by data. So data, it should be something measurable in terms of behavior. And so, for example, we saw this example about people visiting gyms. So you could say that when people who live in cities want to get fitter, which is the goal they want to get to, they will go to our gym, as measured by the number of visits from people who go there. So that's something really simple, but describes in a sentence the world that we want to get to. So for example, we could say that right now there aren't enough visits to the gym, but we want to improve that. And we can measure it by an increasing number of visits. Second step is observing the current world. So what are people doing now or not doing now in terms of behavior? That's something they do today. And you can see, or you should be able to see the difference in behavior between what they do right now or not do right now and what you would like them to do. We can describe the world right now by doing another exercise that is called pressure mapping. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's basically about writing or generating all promoting pressures and inhibiting pressures that the users experience in that situation. Promoting pressures are about why we would like to do the behavior, what makes us do the behavior. So for example, the gym, the fitness example is we feel better afterwards or something. It could be a promoting behavior, pressure. And then inhibiting pressure could be about, or is basically about what keeps us from doing the behavior that is described. For example, the weather is bad, I don't want to get wet in the rain. So that is something that keeps us from doing the behavior we described. And so the behavior itself is basically these competing pressures that form the whole behavior in one overview. So really cool exercise. And of course, we as designers can then build kind of a bridge between those two worlds by seeing what types of outcomes could be more interesting to get to the goal our users want, or we want to have from our users tomorrow. That's me. We did that by grouping these pressures we identified here. So grouping them in groups of related things. And then quickly coming up with how might we's, which are basically sentences that describe, as not really a solution yet, but kind of like a question that describes a possible solution in the future. So for example, how might we make our users more aware of the health benefits of going to the gym on a regular basis or something. That could be a how might we. And then for each how might we, you can generate as much ideas or solutions that you want. And then cluster those ideas in a general main idea that you can go test and validate, basically. So this is a way of really moving quickly and getting a lot of ideas rolling. Pressure mapping, really cool. And then the second thing that I enjoyed really was a workshop about sketching. So I think the main takeaway here is to sketch more. I think we are all doing a lot of digital work, and it's really refreshing to actually draw more and use a pen and really see your your ideas taking shape while drawing, because that's something I think can be really powerful in terms of communication. When you draw while talking, you really get to instantly visualize your ideas, and it's really a lot easier to convey those ideas to a client or whatever, to a coworker in a workshop. And also an interesting topic about start drawing before knowing what it will become, what the drawing will become. And that's basically the last thing as well, that the making influences the thinking. So once you're started to get going in your drawings, it really influences the way you think about solutions. And it's also a really quick way to just visualize a lot of ideas in a graphical way. So for example, you could depict your users doing some kind of exercise, or you could draw storyboards or user flows. These are some real simple examples, but it can go a lot more complex than that. So one of the main things I remembered from the conference, really nice. All right.
Yes. I also went to the conference as a developer, actually, so it was a lot of insights for me, of course. One workshop that I really found very nice was this term, "get stupid faster." It's actually an exercise about brainstorming. So this is like a graph that depicts the amount of ideas you have during a brainstorming session. So when I'm gonna take the laser here. So you start here, you mostly have some idea in your head already, so we do not start at zero. And we generate a few ideas, but they are really relevant, so they stay close to the actual solution. But you quickly go into a slump and you tumble down to the throne of agony. Exactly like a slump where you don't have any ideas anymore. So I think everyone experienced that in a brainstorming session where you can't think of anything. And then someone in the that is with you in the brainstorming session, could be yourself, comes up with like a stupid, crazy idea. And everyone thinks like, okay, that's completely ridiculous. But it gets you thinking again. And you start to think about how can we get this idea more relevant. And then you end up here at the novelty ideas, where you actually have the best idea yet during the whole brainstorming session, and it's right at the end. All right. So, bad ideas clear the path for great ideas, right? So, how do you start with those crazy ideas first? Well, you can add some form of restriction. And a good restriction is actually time. So, if you have a brainstorming session for like 2 or 3 hours, make that 15 minutes and see what you can come up with. And I can guarantee you will have some wacky and crazy ideas, but that might lead to a great idea. So, yeah. And the last one I want to talk about is using a story structure to refine an idea. It's also very interesting. So what you can see here is just a 5-point story structure. It gets used a lot in just like movies or something. So you have the exposition, the world we are in is like the start of the movie. You get the whole world. Then something happens, of course, for the story to advance. And then the protagonist does all these things that can lead up to a climax, final battle, an ultimatum, everything in the story that leads up to this. And then after that you have a resolution. It's like the takeaway, something to think about, right? Okay, so how do we use this for ideas? Well, this is something that Max already said, but we can actually use the 5-point structure to match this. So observe the current world is like the exposition, so it's the start, and describe the world you want is the resolution. So everything in between is the bridge you have to build yourself, right? Okay? So if I have an example here, so people in cities go to the gym more often than people outside of the cities, and want to encourage people who don't live in cities to go to the gym more. So that's like your setup, right? And the resolution is that that's a solution we actually have, but people outside the city are going to the gym a lot more than before. Okay, so how do you fill that in? So you can use a story structure to actually write a story yourself. It can be completely fictional, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that you come to a climax, to a possible solution. All right, so an example could be that the inciting incident would be that you conduct some research. You find out there's a negative sentiment about going to the gym outside the city. Okay, you do some more research to find out why that is. Qualitative research finds that gyms are hard to get to from outside the city. Okay, cool. So it's a bit of a wacky idea, but yeah. We can bring the gyms to people outside the city using mobile gyms that can drive around to certain places that are easier to get to. And boom, you have your full story. And the fun part is that you can repeat this whole process by leaving out, like, say, the climax or the resolution, and filling that in with the exposition, inciting incident, and rising action. And you can have a lot of cycles that way, and you can have a lot of new ideas in that way. So this is a really cool way to generate ideas like that. All right, so to summarize, so we learned how to describe the behavior of your users. We have learned to sketch more. That's something for me as well, because yeah, as a developer, I don't use my pen. Get stupid faster and use story building to refine an idea. That were the four the best takeaways we had for the conference. This is also a picture from the after parties in central Lisbon. So very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any questions for us?
Thanks, first of all,
yeah.
for the nice presentation. It was really insightful for a lot of people. I saw next to me a lot of people nodding all the time, so that's a good sign.
Very nice. Okay.
So are there any questions from the audience?
Yes. The most irrelevant question, I suppose, but what was the solution for the traffic?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we should have looked that up, actually.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. It's just about the idea of, you know,
Yes,
constantly.
I was just curious.
Oh yeah, I can understand. Yes.
Of course. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
In behavioral design, do you design to change people's behavior, or do you design to suit people's behavior?
Well, it's, I think, a bit of both. You could look at in a way of exactly like designing a possible outcome that you as a company yourself want to get to, and you like guide your users to that point. But on the other hand, you can also say, I think, what is the actual outcome or goal that the user is looking for, and we can change even maybe our business process to like go in that direction.
It can be something like a habit that you want to enforce as a company. Something that a lot of people do, but you want to make it more relevant or something. So it can be just the same outcome, but enforce it or something. But it actually it really doesn't matter. It's just about you can change the behavior, but it's not like isolated for it or something. So you can, if there's a behavior that a user does already, you can enhance that or can make it better.
Can look at it from both sides, I think.
Kind of loses the human centricity part.
Kind of, sorry?
Then if you enforce a certain habit, doesn't remove the human centricity, or?
Yeah, in this case it would, yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the second case is far more interesting. Yeah.
Any other questions? Like the conference you went to, the UX Lisbon, what would you say, who should attend there next year? Is it like more design UX, more front-end?
Yeah, well, I actually really liked it as a developer because it gave me a lot of new perspectives that I didn't have before. Also, the concept of design was for me always to make things beautiful and such. But yeah, it really opened a lot of possibilities and what design actually means and does. And that's something I can use as well as a developer.
Yeah.
So it's very nice, yeah.
Yeah, one of the main messages at the end was like the designers are the change makers of tomorrow, in a sense that, yeah, we define how the world tomorrow would look like and works. And I think that applies to, yeah, to everyone in the business basically. Everyone needs to have a view on that, I think, more or less, even there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. Take a short break for 15 minutes. Ah, okay. There is pizza in the back, so hurry to eat it.
For people who need the loop, it's through the blue doors and to the left. I'm not responsible for the interior. Yes, it is hideous.